Are you sure you want to start the stream? Thus spoke Zarathustra. Yeah, we're live.
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what...
Hello. Hello.
Your papers, please.
It's just what you need and not what you don't. I'm apparently live on YouTube with yesterday's card. I forgot to upload the latest graphic. Forgive me, my friends. This is the show that never ends when you do these couple hundred times in a row. It's and it's early. It's 5:08 a.m. in the morning. You tend to forget things a little bit. I am in the process of getting everything disabled. I'm going to allow comments. Just don't comment anything stupid, okay? Let's try that again.
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Not what you don't. You know, that T doesn't seem to come in there at the end. Not what you don't. Many of these various liners, drops, sound effects, whatever you want to call them, station IDs, you know.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Some of them were recorded specifically, as an individual thing. And others were kind of culled together, from various other sound effects used, over the years on various webcasts and radio stations around the country. So that's just the way that goes. Sometimes I'm able to edit these things fairly decently, but some of them are just
funky.
Well, not funky. I mean, they're just harder to get specifically with. If show sounds like I'm a little bit out of it, I am. I just woke up. I literally just rolled out of bed, came downstairs, had some kind of fiber bar. I'm drinking a Dr. You-know-what out of a morning show camping metallic mug with some ice cubes in it. Posted that I was going to do this on the podcasting index. This time with the right link. Yesterday I put I think I put the wrong link up. No matter. If you've discovered this live broadcast for the first time, welcome. And certainly good morning. Certainly good morning. I hope that wasn't too loud in your ears. It is July the 3rd in the calendar year 2021. And it is the future. For people my age, it's the future. And I call it the former United States, and I went on a pretty long, dissertation on that yesterday. And the day before, and I don't know. Somewhere along those hundreds of other webcasts, as I call them, vlogs, podcasts, whatever it is, I've I've described this in 1,000 different ways. For newcomers, it's the 1950s here in my studio, as you can see from the AM radio and the dial telephone and some of the other little objects dart. And let's try to wake ourselves up here.
Really funny. Really funny. What do you mean?
Yeah, you're really funny. What do you mean I'm really funny?
Okay.
So, I've
resigned. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered.
Yeah, that too. It's my first drink of cola in the day, so give me a break. To podcast or not to podcast, that is the title of this particular worldwide webcast. And before I get into that, and it's just, I wanted to talk about, it's a cool day today. I mean, do you guys want the weather? This is the thing. It's hard to say. Do you want the weather? Okay.
Weekend weather.
This always takes a little bit out of my machine, my processor, and slows me down, and my lips are going to go out of sync if you're watching this video-wise. It's currently 64 degrees in the mid-Atlantic states right now. Well, actually 57 degrees. I'm sorry. It just switched on me as I was watching it. Today's high is going to be 75 degrees. Low is going to be 61. Sunday, it's going to be 81 degrees, and the low 61. And Monday, Tuesday, it's looking like it's getting back up into the 90 degrees, and the overnight will be 70. So that's your
Weekend weather.
And that should also suffice for your July 4th weekend. And while it's not a forecast for the entire world, let alone the United States, basically, it's going to be a little bit cooler today, and it's going to gradually heat up, put it that way. I have no idea what's going on in the Pacific Northwest. Forgive me for that. Down south, it's going to be hot. Down south, it's going to be hot. Up north, it's going to be cold. It's going to rain in a few places. I used to have one of these things. I don't have it anymore. I don't believe I have it anymore. I had a generic weather one that was pretty funny. Let's see if I can find it, just for the sake of it, until I wake up. I'm almost getting my Henry Kissinger voice. No, I don't have it, but it is the
Weekend.
We got that one going for us. And I hope that everyone else is doing as fine as I am. I'm wearing a very bright shirt today, which is brightening up everything a little bit more than I would like to at this juncture, but there's nothing I can do about that. So,
Rock Flux Live.
Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
Well, let's hear it.
Insert your station call letters here.
Here we go.
I gotta go.
You're clear to go.
Hey, don't think this sounds really cool?
Let's roll. Go.
yeah. Except we don't have the music part. I'm opening another one of my caffeinated drinks. That was the sound you may or may not have heard into the microphone. I have to talk more into this microphone. I got a Pabst Blue Ribbon Coolie, or whatever they call them there, my soda. I'll set it over here. I think I slept okay last night. I hope you guys slept okay. I've been doing this thing for so long that it's just, get up and just do it.
Why are you telling us this?
Because I gotta tell people something. So let's just get into it. today's show, to podcast or not to podcast. I was considering, in conversations with a friend, and I touched on this briefly yesterday, this idea of, podcasting as podcasting, meaning, something people could, be listed on various podcast sources, and people could go around and jog and go about their daily whatever it is they do and listen to a podcast in their earbuds or what have you, or while they're messing around in the kitchen and stuff like that. And I gave it some careful consideration. I put some thought into it. And the thing of it is that I enjoy this video TV production. It took me a long time to create this black and white image. I'm working with some open source software, this OBS 27.0.1. It's for the Mac version. And it's it's not perfect. I do experience some anomalies. I mostly blame them on YouTube. There still could be some, this is a work in progress, any kind of open source project is. Though, sometimes I consider that it may be the fact that my computer's, it's not a brand new computer, even though I have 16 gigs of RAM in it and, dual quad processors and an SSD drive. Temperature in this room right now is pretty cool. I don't have I should, that's one thing, I'm constantly adding things to this studio. I need to add a thermometer for room temperature. I don't have one here. I have one upstairs. Excuse me. If you didn't hear that, that was a subtle belch from drinking carbonated beverages as the first thing in the morning. I took a few Tums. I don't normally do that. I've been experiencing some light upset stomach. I don't exactly know what that is. I don't normally have that, but for the past week or two, I have a doctor's appointment on the I believe it is the 6th. That's assuming he doesn't decide to extend his July 4th weekend, which usually happens a lot of times. But I'll mention it to him. I'm not, there's nothing worse, just to get on a quick aside. There's nothing worse if you've ever had, the first time you've had heartburn, right? I mean, like a really bad case of heartburn. Like you're trying to go to sleep and it's like, okay, your stomach is hurts. And instead of it getting better, and you take a Rolaids, a Tums, or, Pepto-Bismol, milk of magnesia. I mean, these things happen. There's so many products they have for it. Or people take these home remedies of apple cider vinegar. I've taken this pure aloe juice or almost pure aloe juice. I mean, there's a million things that people have out there, and I'm not telling you to take one or the other. But anyway, it gets progressively worse to the point in which you cannot lay down and you're in wreathing, searing pain. And I've even had, that's right, and there's these things like, is it a Zantac or I forget one. There's one that takes that works in about a half hour, and if it is just heartburn, it will solve the problem in a half hour. Then there's another one for these crazy people who are obsessed with just eating so many spicy foods and stuff that you actually like take this stuff daily, or you have to take it the day before or hours before or something. I mean, and that's scary, you know, because that pain is nothing like it. You know, and it's happened to me a couple of times, and it usually, I don't know what age it began, you know, when the first time it happened. I don't know if it was like around turning 40 or something was the first time it happened. But it was bad, and I was scared. And I didn't know what was going on. But I pulled through it, managed to eventually fall asleep, and then I woke up and it was like nothing, you know, like nothing ever happened. Weird. But just to tell a little Tony Caravan tale, and I don't mean to depress people, or not depress people, but gross people out. And this isn't really gross people out, but you know, a couple of years ago, people want to get to know me. I occasionally tell these stories when I start out the show. I mean, after all, you know.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
You know, that's what it is. And this particular...
This is a nightmare. It must be a nightmare.
So, I had one of these experiences that I assumed was heartburn. And, you know, so it was like, oh, man. And I remembered, I think, down in my kitchen. I'm upstairs in my bedroom. I have a multi-story house. And my mortgage, taxes, and insurance are less than $200 a month. That's another story. If you're a regular viewer of this show or listener to this show, you've heard that 1,000 times. Literally. Anyway, I'm up in my bedroom, and I've got this, you know, this feeling, you know, the stomach, the heartburn, the lower esophagus, you know, whatever. And I'm thinking, I think I have one of those Zantac things or whatever it is. Like I say, don't quote me on the brand name or something. I'm not trying to push something or say do this, do that. And so I go, I think I had one in the back of my cabinet, you know, like in the kitchen, where I kept some old pills from some other problems I've had, which I've talked about over the, you know, the ages. So I go in, and sure enough, there was one in there, you know. And so I took that, you know, drank some water, you know, I'm figuring, you know, okay. You know, this whole concept of this, you know, I guess the concept of heartburn is that, you know, acid, you know, there's a sphincter, you know, it seems to be a funny word, but you've got between your stomach and your esophagus, there's a sphincter there, you know, kind of like one of those things on a camera thing. So they always have in alien movies, you know, that they use those things that close like a, you know, like a camera shutter type of thing. That's a, you know, the sphincter from your esophagus to your stomach, I guess. And apparently stomach acids, what causes heartburns is these acids, they get up and they irritate, you know, your lower esophagus or whatever. And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you what, you know, what I've heard from doctors, you know, or people, you know. So I'm figuring that's what it is. I take this pill, you know, this over-the-counter thing. And luckily I had one in my mind. And I'm drinking some water, you know, trying to keep I don't want those acids coming up into the esophageal passage, you know, irritating me further. The thing is, the reason I had those in my cabinet, that particular, you know, tablet or pill, capsule, whatever it was because it had worked. And like I say, I'm not a chronic sufferer of heartburn or anything like that, or at least I wasn't until recently. I'm getting this like subtle one, but it's another story. So usually within a half hour, those kinds of things actually do work. And that's how people survive this. It's an American thing, whether it's our processed food, we eat too many spicy foods, or, you know, our bodies are just so beaten up because of everything else that, you know, things we just aren't even aware of, you know, whether it's electromagnetic radiation, you know, like I say, the foods we eat, you know, who knows, stress, whatever the case may be. But it just kept getting worse. And this is evening, okay? I go to bed early. So this would have been early evening, like, 7, 8-ish, 9 o'clock at the latest type of thing. And instead of that, a half hour passes, 45 minutes, and it's not getting better. It's getting worse. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like sitting up in bed, wreathing, pain, standing, I'm drinking like water, thinking I can maybe flush this thing out. I don't know what to do, and it's getting worse and worse, and my whole lower stomach, down to my bladder or whatever. I mean, like, oh man. And I just thought, it's got to pass. This is whatever this is. This can't be. And it did. So it's like 11:30 at night, close to midnight. I finally I call like 911 to get an ambulance to go to the emergency room. Right. I don't drive. I don't think I could have driven. That's how much. I literally was like bent over in pain, type of thing. So I'm sitting on, not to make a scene in my neighborhood or anything like that, so I'm out in my front porch stairs, waiting for the ambulance so I could just like walk in, because I didn't want some scene with them coming up with a gurney, up my steps or something and making a thing. So I'm sitting at the bottom of my steps, wreathing in pain. It's like midnight, dark. The neighborhood's all dark. It's like there's nobody around. So, and I'm waiting, and it took them forever. These nothing against ambulance drivers, but where I am, I don't know. The 911, the reaction time was it took like forever. And anyway, so eventually they show up. And I basically let them, I just say, hey, look, I need to go to the emergency room. I got some kind of pain. I can't even stand up. Forget the gurney. Just, help me into the ambulance. Let's get the heck out of here. And it seemed like the ambulance ride, took forever. I was just rolling. Like I say, breathing seems to be the best thing. I'm rolling. I can't, And there's nothing they can do, or would do. So they roll me into the hospital. I don't remember too much about that, but I'm in I'm obviously in the ER. And I'm in a, hospital bed in the ER, and I'm just rolling back and forth in pain, saying, can't you give me something? Give me some pain reliever, please, I literally, and I guess, to be honest with you, embarrassing myself, because that's how bad the pain was. I was literally pleading with these people. And the nurses, were like, we can't, they took some tests, they took some blood, I don't know if they did an x-ray. At that point I was in such pain that I can't even, it's mentally blocked from my mind. But their answer was, no, we can't do anything until we get the test back, because we don't know what it is. So and I'm like, well, just give me, there's got to be some kind of, can't you give me some kind of shot, a pain relief, some kind of shot? It's not going to do anything. Please help me. type of thing. It was pretty sad. So anyway, tests come back, blah, blah, blah. And I guess they assumed that I had a kidney stone. All right. There was a kidney stone. It wasn't heartburn. And somehow over time, they did give me I believe they gave me some kind of pain reliever at some point once they figured that was the thing. And I think I may or may not have been given something called Tamocel or something weird like that, something that enlarges the passages, from your kidneys into your bladder, into urethra, whatever it is, so that if you do have a kidney stone, it's more easy to pass through. I think they might have given me that. I don't know if in an IV or in a pill. And anyway, and somehow neutralize the pain. So they must have given me some kind of pain pill or something. Sent me for a prescription for that, and then said, you have to make an appointment with a urologist because you've got whatever. And that was the beginning of a saga that I wasn't really going to talk about today. And I've talked about that over the years. It was a couple of years ago where I spent almost in and out of the hospital about 6 to 8 months. And eventually having had a kidney operation, believe it or not. And then ultimately, after thinking I was cured, this is the short story. Maybe some other time I'll retell this story. But the short story was, so after I was done with the kidney operation and all of that, and I'm going in for the final visit, I believed, with my urologist, he comes back in the room, hands me a paper, and says, "You've got prostate cancer." And then a whole new chapter began. So sorry for that depressing morning news, and I don't know what got me to think about that, but...
Channel check. Left channel. Left channel.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
Rock Flux.
Let's get this show on the road.
Well, no one ever said it wasn't going to be an interesting show, and it certainly is variety. So if you're new here, that's that. According to my playback, during that story, I think I've grossed somebody out because I had 0 concurrent viewers. So now I got to worry. Well, not worry. I'm not a hypochondriac. That's the thing. But yeah, so now whenever I have any pains, as the march of time goes on, and these frail bodies, like Sting said in that song, how fragile we are. You get these pains, and if it's not something that just happens to pass, quickly, even though it may be subtle, like this upset stomach that I've been getting, lately, you start thinking and wondering, what next, I'm up for my PSA blood test next Monday, and then a meeting and then my 6-month scheduled visit with the urologist, where they look at the PSA test and see if I'm still cancer free, whatever. But it's crazy. Human life is crazy. But that's these on my podcast, as you call them, but as I call it, just a webcast. I've been webcasting since the 90s, before the iPod was invented. And using real audio, right? and sometimes Windows Media for those Windows people who complained. Well, we don't have real audio. Okay, I'll give you real. We'll do it in here's how do you like this? So you used to have your podcast and it would be listed like today's podcast, to podcast or not to podcast. And then aside of it there would be 3 hyperlinks. Remember the term hyperlink? People don't use that one anymore. And so there were 3 hyperlinks, 3 underlined words, and one was RA, meaning real audio. One was WMV, which was Windows Media, and the other one was QT or QuickTime, right? I think Windows Media could have originally. No, it was RM. It was Real Audio that eventually went to RM, Real Media, when they were adding video to it. Windows, the Windows format. Anyway, so all of those formats are pretty much like there's still QuickTime built into Apple, but Apple at one time had the ability with like QuickTime Pro and whatnot, that we were actually you were able to stream on, if you had the Apple server, which I had an Apple server, you were able to stream with QuickTime. People don't know that. You can't do that right now. I mean, you may be able to do some kind of setup, but as far as I see, it's not like, it's not drop down, It used to be like you hit the option key and there would be, if you had QuickTime Pro, there would be extra things you could see and do and all that stuff. Real Audio, forget it, that's gone. The company still exists, but the only way I found a way to translate old real audio files, and I have to take a quick look here to see it. There's a program that I have had, and it's called, and I'm looking for it as I speak, and I hope this doesn't like mess up my broadcast. Where is this thing? It's called Audio Converter Lite, and it's something that's working on my Mac. I'm working with right now a Mac. Like I said, it's a quad-core Intel i7 with 16 gigs, and I'm only able to run Catalina, like the late Catalina pushed to its limit. It won't take the latest software. It's incapable of doing that. I'm going to adjust my microphone and hope this doesn't do anything weird for you. But anyway, that software program still kind of works for me, and it doesn't say that it translates, or converts a real audio file to an MP3. But just for the sake of it, since it's a drop and drag program, I dropped and dragged a couple of real audio, because I used to do shows in the 90s. I've been doing this stuff for 25 years. Longer than some of the current podcasters, have, when they were either infants or weren't even born. And I have some shows, and I have a few here, like, let me just dig out a few, just to listen.
Tony Caravan with you. The Fireside Chat. Hey, thanks for tuning in this week. I want to talk a little bit about...
these are old shows.
Welcome to another Tony Caravan Live. Tonight I'll be doing something a little bit different. Rather than focus on the issues with a guest, I'll be presenting what I believe are the top...
This is one of my favorite ones. It was titled Humans as Pets.
Humans as Pets. The topic for this week's discussion.
And, the funny thing is, this is a time you have to understand there weren't many of us doing these, as we called it, webcasting at that time, because it was uncharted territory. You either had the ability and the background, the equipment and the ability to do it, and the server with the bandwidth to be able to serve this out to multiple listeners, or you didn't. You could create something from your own computer, even your own home server, but you were limited by the bandwidth. And I was fortunate enough to work with a guy in San Diego who had an ISP and had all the bandwidth in the world. Though I, paid a fee for that bandwidth at that time, and it wasn't cheap. But there were there were people like me doing that these shows, and at one point I had the longest running lounge show. I used to do a lounge show. You remember lounge was big in the in the 90s. And let's see if I have, to give you an example of this. I'm just looking through, like here we go. That's a guy named Bob Thompson. And, so there was that kind of like instrumental lounge music. And then, of course, there was like the Rat Pack and stuff like that. And I used to do a weekly show in the 90s. And it was pretty popular. It was written up in magazines. And I'd always get at least like 20,000 listeners. It was amazing. But it cost me about $400 a month bandwidth-wise with this service, this ISP service. That's what they were charging me, $400 a month to do that show. Fortunately at the time I was a creative director of an advertising agency, so I was making decent money. So it was like, and I was into it was like when I wasn't doing my agency job, and I was basically, I'd get up in the morning and I'd be on the internet, and when I was finished doing the work of the day, in the office, I'd be back on the internet until I basically pass out. And somewhere amidst that, I'd find a way to have happy hours after work, almost every day. I used to smoke cigarettes. It's like the era of Art Bell, you sat there in front of the microphone with, either a beer, a coffee, right, and a cigarette, a pack of cigarettes, and you just did this kind of thing. That's the way it was 25 years ago or more. And things just changed, it's but it was an interesting time. There was literally just several handfuls of us doing this, and the reason there was basically because of bandwidth. And if you didn't have a connection with somebody who had an ability to serve out tens of thousands, you just couldn't do it. Because if you were trying to do it from your house, your server would be overwhelmed once you'd get 8 listeners or something like that, if that, depended on your connection. And as time progressed, you had higher bandwidth. But, the high bandwidth was strictly limited to certain market areas. And, the average person was still using dial-up at that time. Which is crazy, but that's just the way it was. I was using dial-up. I was fortunate enough to have been in an area where early on they had gotten, cable. That's what it was then. It was like through the cable company they had internet. So that meant I was able to get high-speed internet. But prior to that, it was like dial-up. I keep forgetting, I want that old sound, of the modem. And I know I have it recorded. I have so many audio clips. I know I have it somewhere, but it's it's not on the machine that I use, on this, what I call this side.
Meow, 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 meow.
The one that I'm playing these clips from. So anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is, apart from that weird ambulance story, heartburn and all that nonsense, is that there's something about this thing, and if you're watching this, I just pulled up a beer. It was an image I had from yesterday, and the idea, what I like about this setup is that not only am I broadcasting in black and white, which is to me just a throwback to a better time. I don't know how else to say it, but it's just, I wouldn't have it any other way. So this is title card that I'm using over at, it's called Mastodon. It's a podcasting index, and it's kind of it's the hand of God image from I believe this image was taken. I'm going to prop up the original because I think I have the pure original one. Yeah, I don't want to browse anymore. Okay, sorry. I believe this is probably an image from the telescope, the big telescope from Hubble. And there's some interesting, really interesting things that Hubble has shown us over the years. That's amazing. Actually, I already had it there under another category. But I like this idea. And so it's hard, some shows are just storytelling shows. And in those instances, it's a podcast, but it's like anything else. If you're trying to tell a story that requires you to have visuals, then, what are you going to do? And I also noticed that if I bring a GIF image in, like I have this on-air GIF image, and it won't do the animation, which is kind of a letdown. So that's one of the fallacies. Folks who are working on this. And then the other thing is just fun, where I can show and talk about things. This is my rainbow sherbet I had the other day, and just out of curiosity and nonsensical geekdom, foodie type of thing, you also get a picture of what my room looks like in the daytime. You could see the Mac on this image. You could see the original Mac computer next to an Andy Warhol banana. And but in the foreground there's this rainbow sherbet ice cream. And if you're curious, if you put Cool Whip on top of orange sherbet, right? It tastes just like a creamsicle. I don't know. I get into stuff like that. It's like if you eat a Three Musketeers bar and then you drink like a cola, you know, a carbonated cola. It like foams up in your mouth. It's an interesting experience, you know. Yeah, I know.
All your life you will remember this night, and you'll know whom you have turned loose upon the world.
But I'm starting to lean towards the idea that the cooler I keep my CPU, the less likely I am to have problems. That's not to say that I don't think YouTube has throttled me, you know, shadow banned me, etc., etc., etc. But that, you know, it's just one of those things. And, you know, a lot of people just do a podcast. I mean, there are people podcasting just basically from a smartphone, you know. I happen to have a more complex studio setup here. Some people might say it's overly complex. I have the ability to actually take call-ins. You know, I've got that set up. I have a limiter. Some people don't like it, but you may notice there's a slight reverb in my voice. I wanted to create kind of a bigger sound, kind of reminiscent of the old AM radio stations. You know, when I was a kid, I used to at nighttime like listen to this CKLW, excuse me, that thing from Detroit, CKLW, the Motor City, you know, and I lived like states away from that. But those AM powerhouse stations at night, you know, used to pick up, and they just played all this really good music, and they had the boss jocks type of guys on there, you know. I mean, radio was my life. I was a DJ on radio when I was like a junior or senior in high school. I was actually on the local radio station, a 50,000 watt, you know, station. So that's when that's the bug, you know, got me. So literally my whole life I've been involved in this kind of thing, on and off. Somewhere in there was a belch, whether you heard it or not. Like I tell people all the time, my work, you know, whether it's the books I've written, you know, or the songs I've written, you know, everything I do is like just authentic and live, pretty much unfiltered, unrehearsed, you know, just off the seat of my pants. And even in recording, I usually just do one, even when I'm doing a multi-track recording where I'm laying down, you know, a rhythm track, a bass track, you know, a lead track, and then I add the vocal. In most cases, it's just one pass. And, you know, some of my songs reflect that. And some of them have come together very well. You know, I mean, I've slightly produced them after the fact, just for the sake of making sure that, you know, the lead wasn't overpowering the vocal or something like that. But I rarely mess around with it. I don't have an engineer. I don't have a producer. I mean, I do all that stuff myself. I've mastered my own CDs and stuff. You know, which, man, I wish I was working with a band, and I wish I had an engineer or a producer around here or something like that. But, you know, those are some of the sacrifices you make to live free. And, and again,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
So it's, it's my show, it's my life. I've chosen to do what I do. And in order to live this way and to have the freedoms that I have, I live in an area that I just don't have, that kind of access to people, who want to jam, or or engineers, producers, or things of that nature. So you just do what you do, and it's just honest, straightforward, without any, you take it as it is. And if someone wants to work with it, I've got the individual tracks. I've recorded everything. I use that program. I'm a Mac person. I use Logic Pro. So I have all the original files for most of I think all of my songs, really. But so I guess they could in effect be remastered. At some point, if I wanted to. But there's a certain thing about it that they just come off. It's like live. It's live. It's recorded live. Is the way I look at it. And many of my books are the same way. I've written 9 books. I'm working on the 10th. And the idea is that, my last book, half of it was flow of consciousness, actually. You can see it behind me. It's I'm trying to get the right thumb up here. I'm looking at my screen not as a mirror reflection. Anyway, my thumb is pointing at codex. See that word, codex? That's my latest book. Next to the original AM radio. It's a tube radio. And you can see above it there's some tubes, that would have gone into that radio. Remember calculators? Before they were just an app on a smartphone. So, occasionally, so I get my books. When I first... I self-published my book, first book, and actually the first couple books. And when the first couple books came back, I'm reading through them, and I'm finding, oh man, it's like not so much a typo, but things that a computer, when you're working with, not necessarily a word processing program. I think I was using InDesign at the time, but there's spell checkers and things like that built into it. That so you're and I'm reading and rereading and going over these things with a fine-tooth comb the best I can. But I didn't have anyone proofreading for me or an editor. So there are certain limitations to spell checkers. It's like I always, and I could get into the AI thing, and, on the same vein. But, a spell checker or even some of these algorithms that they've built into these programs now that almost even deal with stylistic things. But they still don't catch certain things like, you might have the word that, or the, 2 thes in a row or something weird like that. Because it's obviously the is spelt right, and it does not understand because it is not, And granted, some of these things have become a little more sophisticated, but it's still not, and never will be, sophisticated enough for the creative mind that is just writing something, and whether it's a free flow of consciousness like I've done on certain occasions, or someone who's taking some kind of creative liberty in their writing. And so I had a couple of reprints, in the early days on some of my books, because I felt almost embarrassed, because I was sending them out at that time to people, But then I decided against it. I said, you know what, the hell with it. It is what it is, I wrote the book. I've refined, in fact, many of my after my first two books, some of my books, I was writing a lot of essays online. And a lot of my books towards the middle of, say, this grouping of 9 to 10 books, somewhere in the middle there, were pretty much based on essays that I had written, and then they were just reworked, edited, expanded, and to be included into my books. So that there was so much time put into them that I had become, I could almost just recite them. But the problem is, in having a printing background, I know this is dragging on for some people, for anybody. But, the idea is you can't edit your own work, because what happens is, inevitably, you're just not going to see that thing. You see what you're want to see, or what you're not going to pick up on that. In fact, when I proofread once when I was younger at a job I had. And one of the ways of proofreading certain things, not like in a book, something like as big as a book, but in like advertisements and things of that nature. The idea is we used to read backwards. So if there was a sentence, rather than try and read the sentence and to proofread it, the idea was to look at the sentence from backwards. So you were just looking at each individual word out of context, and that way you would catch things that normally your brain wouldn't fill in. It's the same as when people look up at the sky and they see a cloud, a face, that whatever that's called, you see a face in everything, or you see some kind of thing. Kind of like that image I plopped up just a moment ago. The hand of God, they call that particular, formation, plasma, thingamajig. You see something in a thing because that's just the way we are. Oh, don't mind me stretching. It's so early. 6:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the former United States of America. And I believe it's going to remain the former United States of America. So that kind of, so I guess the conclusion there is that, if these people want to listen to these, this is a beret I'm wearing, by the way, for those watching. For people who want to listen to something like this, I mean, the visuals aren't all that important, really, I guess. Sometimes they are. I mean, I've had shows where I've presented, where I was trying to get a point across. I've had shows where I was showing heavy equipment and how its reliance on carbon-based fuels, where I was actually showing machinery and things of that nature. And so there are sometimes I'll do these things and they'll be very visually intense. So if you don't see the visuals, you're really missing out on it. But in most cases, it's just conversation. I apologize today a little bit because even though I felt like I had a good night's sleep, And the weather was actually what they would call good sleeping weather. You know, it's cool and stuff. It's just not, totally 100% today for some reason. So I don't know. Maybe a little more caffeine in the second hour. We're approaching the second hour here, and maybe we'll wake up a little bit. As he takes a swig from his carbonated cola drink. I'll see if the cat is still here. Yeah, the cat is here. Those of you who have listened here to me know that my cat is afraid of my guitar. Any guitar. The cat sees the guitar somewhat like a vacuum cleaner. It's not afraid of music. It loves music, and it hangs around me all the time when I'm playing music. And I play music is my life, so I play music all the time. And I play music loud, and the cat's like there, hangs out, and it's like, hanging out, with me, and, like cats do, they hang out with you, But somehow when I go to grab the guitar, it acts similar to when I go to grab the vacuum cleaner. And anyone who has a cat understands that concept, But I was thinking of doing Folsom Prison Blues on the guitar, just for the sake of it. I hear, I. But sure to chase the cat away if I grab the guitar. But let's do it. He'll be okay. He'll survive it. Let's see what we got here. Bring the microphone in close. I don't know, sometimes I do these Johnny Cash renditions of these songs. Just because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, I like Johnny Cash. In general. I tune this thing a little bit. There we go. I don't know why I'm... Okay. The temperature change in a room will affect the string. Oh shit. I was messing with the wrong machine. Alright. I can't guarantee this will hold its tune. I Gotta get into it. I hear the train a-comin', rolling around the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps on rolling down the San Antone. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear the whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry. I adjusted the microphone. Johnny Cash voice just isn't on today. Let's try verse 3. I bet there's rich folks eating in a fancy dining car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. But those people keep a-moving. That's what tortures me. I hear that train a-comin'. It's rolling around the bend. I ain't. Anyway. Hi, I'm Tony Caravan. I'm not Johnny Cash. I do these Cash things every now and then. I hurt myself today. To see if I still feel. I've focused on the pain. The only thing that's real. And that song's intense. I'm not exactly in the mode of that song, so I was gonna switch to something recorded by Elvis that was written by a bunch of guys, and Elvis has a credit on it, but so do a few. So does Mae Axton and Tommy Burden. Well, since my baby left me, I found a new place to dwell. It's down at the end of the lonely street. It's the Heartbreak Hotel. I've been so lonely, baby. I get so lonely. I get so lonely I could die. Although it's always crowded, you still can find some room where broken-hearted lovers they cry away in their gloom. I get so lonely. I get so lonely. I get so lonely I could die. Since my baby left me. This is a Johnny Cash rendition, not the Elvis rendition, you know. Well, since my baby left me, I found a new place to dwell. It's down at the end of Lonely Street at the Heartbreak Hotel. I've been so lonely, baby. I get so lonely. I get so lonely I could die. Anyway, that's that. Yeah, the cat is gone, as expected. I just collect some of this sheet music every now and then. You know, I haven't had the chance to sit down and just like learn the songs, you know, like I used to in the old days. This is a beret. Anyway, I say that too often.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
I want to play the guitar more. I used to play guitar. I mean, it's like being, you know, the radio DJ and stuff like that. I was a general manager of a radio station. I was also a sold for a station. I mean, I've done every job basically. You know, and that's not even my real life. That was just like in between stuff. But it's like when you do a lot of things, you know, and I'm not tooting my horn, as I try to say all the time, because some people, you know, so I really don't care. I wouldn't belch on the air if I cared. It's like, though I have a lot of time in the day and I'm free, because I now live below the poverty line. That's part of this vlog, is this idea that you can free yourself from stress by eliminating, you know, all of the material pressures on you. And I don't mean like to live some kind of minimalistic weird life and or any of that nonsense. Okay, I mean, if that's your thing, that's your thing. That's cool. But no, that's not what I'm talking about. No, what I'm saying is that, you know, and even last night I don't know what it was that I was watching, because I've been binge watching this Star Trek Discovery thing on that Paramount Plus. You know, you got to do something. It helps, you know, before I go to sleep, I'll usually have some show at some point, you know, that I'll watch. And it's not like and there are various degrees of personal involvement I get, you know. I mean, me being a Trekkie, you know, hey, beam me up, Captain Pike. Yeah, right. And watch out for that thing. Tony out. You gotta have a communicator, man. But that's one of those visuals. I just held up a communicator if you're listening to this and you can't see what I'm doing. So, you know, some shows are better than others, you know. Some shows you watch, I've talked about this, there's for eye candy, like there's some hot babe in it, and forget about political correctness. I'm not, I don't go that route. I was watching the show Criminal Minds, which to me was a very repetitive show that went on for 15 seasons of that show. And I used to get involved with that show because I liked A.J. Cook, the actress who played J.J. on it, the blonde, and I liked her earlier on before she started working out, and she kind of her arms got muscular or something like that. And I was like, she wasn't the geek, the classic geek, girl. But I'll watch a show, so it's either because there's some kind of eye candy like that, so a character you could really get into, or Star Trek, which is like what can you say? It's a time-proven thing. Star Trek's been around almost my entire life, so it's like, Star Trek. The white handkerchief. And, so that's a different thing. And, different versions of Star Trek have, you get more either like or you don't like. I mean, I can't even think of how many Star Treks there have been. I was never a Deep Space Nine type of person. I did watch the Voyager series. Obviously the Next Generation was, very enjoyable. Passed a lot of time with that. The original series, I mean, I'm like anybody else, growing up, I could almost recite the lines to, to those shows. And this Discovery isn't that bad. I also watched Picard, Star Trek Picard, which wasn't that bad. And I guess they're going to do another season. But man, Picard's getting old, And that's coming out in 2022, so it's like, But anyway, so I don't know the point I was trying to make. But that's what I was doing last night. I do that before I go to sleep. I'll do a mini binge watch. I'll watch a couple episodes of one of these shows. I don't have TV per se. So, in fact, it's on Paramount Plus, and I canceled my Paramount Plus subscription. But it runs until the 17th of July, so I should have enough to finish out the, binge watching Star Trek Discovery. Did I say Voyager? Discovery. But they have some interesting things on there, like the old Perry Masons and stuff like that, I guess. So I don't know. I may or may not renew that. It depends. If there's a new movie or something that comes out in July, we're in July now, so we should be seeing new seasons. Netflix, man, has that sucked. I mean, I don't really. How could it? I guess was it taken over by Disney or something weird like that? I mean, I don't know what, but it's like. There's just it's lost everything it had, There were these Marvel, great shows. Like do I still have them here? Or did I take them in the other room? Let's see. Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, The Punisher, right? Those kind of Marvel shows, the late great Stan Lee. And a couple of those shows are still on, but they took The Punisher off because he was just too cool for Netflix. You can't have this guy, But it's the end of an era. It really is. In that sense. And this idea of where things are done for the sake of, well, I called it was like my experience, it's a phrase I use, walking on eggshells. So I felt in many ways like doing these various vlogs, webcasts, podcasts, whatever you want to call it. Many of us, if you're not a household name, or even if you are a household name, you're walking on eggshells, because if you say something, then they could just block you or just, erase you from existence. Some people get away with talking about, certain things, the unspeakable. But some others, don't, and they just, they erase you. You just vanish. You become a non-person. In today's world, that's how it is. It doesn't matter, I could go around here and do this. I get accused of tooting my own horn all the time when I do this, but I showed you my book Codex in the back, which you can see the word Codex if you see the top of what I'm holding in my hand, that book there. That's a book, Codex. But what I'm holding in my hand right now, for those, are my books. Not even all of them. And on top of these books and in front of these books are some of my CDs. And you could see, if you're visually watching this, you can see my name. And they're even still shrink wrapped. But when I was on Twitter, I never got a blue check or anything. This is a beret. Yet my music, 50 some songs or whatever, were on iTunes, Spotify, available everywhere. My books were available on iBooks. You could buy hard copies, which I recommend buying the print version on Amazon or any bookstore. You can order them. But on Kindle as well, and all over. There's music, and this stuff is available everywhere. I think Google Books there for a while, or Google Music, I don't know. Amazon, I asked my Echo Dot the other day. I was hanging out in the kitchen. I said, play the music of Tony Caravan. And it just, for 2 hours, was just played all my songs. But yet I won't get a blue check. And if I would talk about some of these unspeakable things, however documented in fact or, science, they would just okay, yank that guy's account. Who cares that he's one of the founding, guys? He's been on since 2013 or something like that, right? That's how long I've been on, YouTube, I believe. I saw that somewhere when I was looking at something different. Some of my earlier videos go back that far. Think about that. So it's you're one of the people that helped build the platform, and and they'll just nix you. This new generation, I won't even call it a generation, this new gang. That's the best way to really refer to them. I just thought of that now, and I think it's a good way of referring to them. It's like this gang of people that have kind of bullies, gang of bullies. And they just kind of create stuff just out of thin air, and they keep adding to it. It's like a bunch of, punk kids or like junior high student council members. Yeah, and let's add that to it too. Yeah, that kind of thing. And yet they're in these positions of where they can, make the, adjust these terms of service and things of that nature, and literally destroy people's lives, people's livelihood, and all that kind of thing. And it's all based on words and triggering and things out, the 50-year-old things that have since been like long, it's ancient history. And they cherry pick too. So it's like they'll find, they love to find an example of some sort of what they would call an injustice or some kind of thing. But they omit, what I call lies of omission, something else. So, for example, a tragic death or something, for example. They ignore the fact that there's 19 to 20,000 homicides in the U.S. every year. And they'll pick one or a handful that kind of fit a certain profile that they want to exploit and that the media will pick up as content and milk for a year. But those other 19,000 people that were victims of homicides and their families and the tragedies involved in all those situations, they don't care about that. And nothing gets done. And that's the kind of world we live in today. It's like this Peter Pan culture gang of people that have kind of like somehow managed weaseled, because that's what they are. They're little weaseled their way into the big tech companies and media. And they somehow have like created, it's like extortion and threatening. You better listen to us or we're going to turn on you. And, and of course you've got these people who are making $20 million a year or multi-million-dollar salaries in media and and corporations and stuff, and they've got product lines and stockholders and stuff. And these little weasels, Peter Pan culture gang, because that's what they are. They're just a little gang of thugs, right? And they say, if you don't, do this or say this or fire that person, we're going to come after you and ruin your life and your family's life. And so it's pretty fascinating. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about that because everybody's afraid. And so one of the freedoms that I've found is that by I live below the poverty line. So I don't, they could take me off of this platform and I guess I can move to another one, or I could just stop doing it. I'd be disappointed. I'm not going to openly admit that. I enjoy this. It's a good outlet. I get as much out of this as hopefully the few handful of people that watch it do, right? Because I watch these back, and so it's just self-expression, but it's also it's a process. It's some kind of I'm sure some shrink would have some explanation for it. It's a way. It's a creative outlet for me at the very least. I'm not writing a book. I'm doing this webcast. I'm not recording a song. I'm doing this webcast. It's guys, women, whatever. Whomever, whatever. if you have that creative impulse, that need to express yourself in some way, the artiste, right? The creative mind is always going to find some outlet in order to express itself. That's what creativity is. If you want to find it, that's a definition of creativity, at least my definition of creativity, is that people that are driven to express themselves, as opposed to someone else who's just and there are many other different kinds of individuals, but as opposed to someone else who's just like wants to walk in lockstep and watch the media and follow whatever they say. I find myself, I'm not currently writing songs, and I don't know, I may write a few more songs. But like I say, I've got about 50 songs. In my one book, wherever it is, this one. In my book 8, which has, the 8 also is like an infinity symbol. In this particular book, it opens up with a little bit of, there's some short some short essays and some ideas in here. For example, the simulacrum, Latin, plural for simulacra, likeness or similarity, a representation or imitation of a person or thing. I'm just going to read something from this book. Excuse me. Just to give you an idea, but this book isn't really a book of books, and that's what I'll explain. But this paragraph, let's just go into this, just to give you this idea. Decades ago, postmodernist philosopher John Baudrillard, and I'm not pronouncing his name right, examined the relationships between reality, symbols, and society, and the significance of symbolism in our culture and media. He claimed that our current society has replaced all reality and meaning with symbols and signs, and that human experience is a simulation of reality. In short, simulacra are copies depicting things that either have no original or that no longer have an original. Okay, let me just read that again. See, I haven't looked at this in a long time. This is heavy stuff. In short, simulacra are copies depicting things that either have no original or that no longer have an original. All right? So the idea is that there are things in society now that we've replaced reality with these sign symbols, and that human experience is this simulation of reality, not like the simulation theory, but the idea that simulacra are copies of things that actually have no original, or that original no longer even exists. So we're living, so that part of our reality, it's a heavy concept, is based on things that either never existed or existed, or no longer exist. I'm sorry for that belch. But anyway, so what happens is the better part of this book, however, this is more or less a poetry book, and apart from an example of my raised bed garden, it's the beat poetry of Tony Caravan. And I'm just going to give you an example here. And so what this book then proceeds to do is just go through pages upon pages of my songs. And I don't believe in this particular book I even bothered to put the contents in it. So, I'm looking at I'm on page 100. Actually, beyond page 100. But I'm looking at, 105, 107. So from pages... Bear with me, folks. So from page 20 to page 109 are just all lyrics to my various songs. So that's how many songs I wrote. So that's what this book is, basically a lyric book. And when I say everything you know is wrong, hyper-reality, human, cattle, the afterlife, soul traps, freedom and natural law, self-healing, happiness and hope, it's basically concepts that are based upon, my songs more so than in my other books, which would be essays, short stories, and actual life experiences. And on the back of this book, an incredible journey into the mind and adventures of one of the most under the radar legendary figures in modern pop culture. This book will take everything you think you know, toss it in a blender, and grind it down to subatomic particles, then scatter them in the wind. And it says includes lyrics to over 50 of Tony Caravan's beat poetry tracks. And what I'm trying to say here is that, I've written over 50 songs. But it was a thing, it was an experience. This is a beret, And the beat poetry period, and my songs are still, they're living things. They're timeless. I play them from time to time. I get hits, copyright hits for my own songs. But, they're, currently I still think, my view of the smartphone and people's obsession with it is this song here just says it all.
I dropped my overpriced smartphone and it shattered. Surprisingly, my first thought was that I was free. Free from the virtual cage that tethers us, but tears us apart. Free from the notifications, replies.
Free. The virtual cage. That's what I call it.
Hey, it's me. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. I'm just trying to explain to the good folks out there, that we're
making up the rules as we go along.
My process and what this is about. It's repetitive to some, but, I think every time it's a work in progress. It's one way of looking at it. Which is another way to describe my books. When I was talking about the essays and things. So it's, in other words, you write an essay, you get a concept, or you write a song, or whatever it might be, but particularly an essay, and then you work on it and you rework it and you rework it. And that's what these shows have become for me. In other words, I've written these songs. I've written these books, these essays, these stories, right? And now what I'm doing is, for someone might think of some of this stuff as very repetitive, right? But in my mind, it's like I'm working out those ideas. And for someone who really wants to listen to this thing, this is a clear example, of expanding your mind and, going through the thought process and refining ideas, questioning things, working out details that, heretofore were unclear, right? Having these, moments of enlightenment, or whatever. And that's kind of what it is. And that's what this show is all about. So it's another extension of that impulse, the creative impulse, the need to express something, right, in a way. It would be like someone that's doing a series of paintings, and they, and someone would look at them and say, there's a similarity here, right? And another way of looking at that similarity would be that this person is working out something here, this series, right? Which may or may not be the case for an individual artist, but in my case, that's what it would be. And I've toyed around with the idea of doing, a series of actually oil on canvas works. And I may or may not do that, I don't know. Perhaps in the, coming decade, if I, survive these various ailments that just seem to keep, cropping up. The frailty of the human android body, It's interesting. It's amazing. But, that's me. That's what this webcast is about, and will continue to be. And, sometimes it's just kind of funny, weird. I have a lot of funny, weird stuff like this.
Hey, did you see a dark-haired guy run by here?
Dark-haired guy run by, Chief. Dark-haired guy go in the water. Shark in the water. Well, let it do, my wee Spanish lady.
That's a classic Dana Garvey line. Here's one from a friend of mine, Tattoo.
You got a rattlesnake inside your house. You got a rattlesnake inside your house.
There's just one in here? Yeah, I hope.
I hope. That's a regular on the show. Or
I took a vow of peace. And now you want me to help you kill all these men?
Yes, Padre.
I'll see what I can do.
What the heck? So it's not all, it's not all seriousness. You can't take life too serious.
This calls for some big scratching.
You gotta have fun. You gotta laugh.
Really funny. Really funny.
You have to laugh. And like I was saying, I've taken this thing where it's hard for people to comprehend this, but it's like, if I've been all over, if you've watched my videos, and some of them are ridiculous, but I mean, out of the hundreds of them, there's a solid 100 that are really cool. It's like my books, they're not all great. And it's like my music. Not all my songs are like something you'd say, oh, that's a great song. But there's some really really great ones in there. But the idea is that, I'm trying to just live a simpler life, in a sense, where I don't have, the stress on top of me of being the person. I get these job offers and headhunters coming after me all the time to take positions, to do things, work on either projects or come on board as some kind of, creative director, producer, or do some kind of thing and stuff like that. And I just, I don't even respond anymore because I'm not interested in it. I just don't want to do it. I did it. I spent a lifetime doing things like that and traveling. My life is like the complete opposite of a lot of other people's lives. Many people start out and I jumped right into like things, happening, like right into I started at the top type of thing, kind of stuff. And I traveled a lot when I was young and held good positions when I was young. And so, people get old or older and they want to travel and they want to do these things and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going like, man, I've already done that stuff. I've already, circumnavigated the globe, I've already been, lived and worked in California and New York and DC and Philly, and I've been in most of the contiguous United States, lived in the Florida Gulf Coast. I mean, I did all these things. I mean, it was an amazing life, like I say in that description, I'm just an ordinary guy, but I've happened to live an extraordinary life, and I've got these stories to tell about it, and that's really all this is. It's not like tooting the horn thing, like, hey, look at me, not all my stories and not all the things I did were great successes. I've had tragedies, I've made blunders, royal blunders along the way, made mistakes, miscalculated, whatever. I've had good relationships. I had bad relationships. I've been divorced twice, I had a handful of other relationships that, I really wish would have turned out well, but they didn't, and so in effect it, so I regret that. But nonetheless, you march on, you keep on, and that's it. And so I'm at a point in life where, I've accumulated things like you can see around me, in the background. And I have other stuff. I got everything I kind of need, almost, as the blues song goes. I got everything I need, almost. And, I do this garden thing out back. I listen to music. I've got an incredible music collection. I've got this nice setup here. I enjoy doing this kind of thing. So as long as I can do this, I will continue to do this. And it is a creative outlet for me and a form of expression. And I'm also trying to share some experiences. Sometimes I talk about these things as far out as the Earth's magnetic field weakening and solar problems, that we may experience. There's a possibility, a distinct possibility that many people believe we could be in a grid down situation in the next 10 years. I mean, imagine that, imagine that and what that would mean for life on this planet. We've become so dependent upon electricity, and that the blundering, bumbling, that gang I was talking about, who have no concept of anything, right? Who are completely reliant upon these devices, right? Imagine them suddenly in a situation where they can't text or talk to anybody and it's a grid down situation. You know, what are they going to do? Right? Well, me, I'm like going to be, well, I guess I'm not doing a webcast today, but I've got my, you can't really see it here anymore. It's back here. I've got, if you go to my see this, I don't know if how the quality is, but there's a thing, it says greatsolarstuff.com. You know, you go to TonyCaravanLive.com and there's some links there. It's not a great site or anything. It's on a Google Sites. That's the other thing. I've made fantastic sites over the years that would blow your mind. I've even innovated in the 90s things, you know, crazy sites that did things you can't, you know, people had challenged me, you know, clients would, when I was doing in the advertising business, for example, challenged me, you know, could you have a site where it opens up with someone, it was a sign language site, where it opens up with sign language and then it jumps into this and does this, and I'm like, how am I going to do that? But I did it. You know, I've had people asking me, you know, and I always took those challenges and succeeded at them. But at this point, I'm like, forget it. I'll just get, you know, I'll go to Google Sites and just give you the, you know, just the facts, right? Here's the links, here's whatever. But, you know, even if, like I say, if someone hits a pole and the power goes down, man, I've got backup power, you know? I'll still be able to listen to music, and I'm growing my own food. I'm fine. And I'm not a prepper or anything like that. I'm just a regular guy who's lived an extraordinary life, and I've got the stories to tell. That's what this is. And so as long as this lasts, you know, I'll share some of that stuff with you. And from time to time, and if you want to go back and research and fast forward through some of my videos, because some of them are insane. But some of them are really cool. Some of them are funny as hell. Some of them are real serious, and some of them I delve into some of these issues, like, you know, in depth. But whatever the case may be, it's the same as listening to my body of work musically or reading my books. You know, there's stuff in there that's, you know, going to blow your mind, and there's other stuff in there that'll be like, doesn't do anything for me. And that's how we all are, you know. Everyone's fascinating, everybody's interesting, you know, in some way. You know, that's part of the beauty of getting to know people. You know, it's one of the things I miss, you know, living this more or less simplistic life, you know, where I'm at the poverty level, you know. So, you know, it's like I always tell people, you know, when you take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and with the pros and cons, the things you like, the things you don't like, you know, the good, the bad, you know, that type of thing. And you make those lists on either side of that sheet of paper, and that's how you kind of, and you need to visually do that. It helps to visually do that. And you look down and you kind of decide, it tells you two things. One, it tells you if you're really on the right path with your life. Because if you're, you know, if you've got more, you know, cons and more things that you dislike on that sheet of paper that are a part of your life, then you're clearly not on the right path, and you're clearly not happy. You know, it's another thing about this gang of these people who extort these businesses, politicians, and, you know, these big tech companies into doing all this craziness, right? They're angry people. They're not happy. You know, you don't see, you know, they always got these like angry faces, right? There's this, or, you know, or pointing finger. You triggered. That person needs to be, you know, destroyed. I mean, it's crazy the way they go. And it's like, that's not my scene. My scene is, you know, Be happy, man.
Really funny. Really funny.
Enjoy life. Like my sidekick. Anyway.
Good morning.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Yeah, I think I'm going to end it there. So visit TonyCaravanLive.com and get a shirt, or do something like that. Get a shirt, mug, book, song, something.